What's up? It's Metal Dave Glessner along with my co-host Jason McMaster with you here on the Talk Louder podcast. Wow, Michael Bruce, what an honor. Second,
yeah, he's like a legendary beyond. Like you think of legendary people that wrote tons of music that if you were born in the 60s and 70s, hell, if you were born at any time, his songs are still on the radio. You hear them in the grocery store.
If you were born yesterday, you know school's out.
Yeah, so these songs are timeless. They're never going to go away. People might not know that it's Alice Cooper, but they know the song "School's Out," etc.
18 schools out, no more Mr. Nice Guy.
Unbelievable.
I got to ask Michael about the song Be My Lover because he is the sole writer on that song. He's solely credited for that song, and it's one of my favorites from that era. So it was a real honor to have him today. He's the second member of the original Alice Cooper band that we've had on the Talk Louder podcast. You'll recall that we had drummer Neil Smith on the show not too long ago, so you can go back into our archives and look up that episode as well. But yeah, pleasure to have him today. I'd like to thank Lynn Townsend, Michael's wife, for facilitating the show today. She was responding to my emails and text messages and was very kind and made this happen. So we appreciate you, Lynn. Thank you very much. Michael Bruce on the Talk Louder podcast. Yes, Michael, thank you so much for joining us today. We're big fans of your music and your career, and we're honored to have you with us. First, let's start from the beginning. I know that you and the Alice Cooper guys met in high school, and you guys were athletes at the time on the track team, if I recall. Tell me about when was the moment that you traded sports for rock and roll?
Well, hey, honey. Never mind. Well, I actually went to North High and they went to Cortez High. They were on the track team, and I see a lot of track players out. I was going to do the swimming team, but North High didn't have a swimming pool, so I opted for tennis, and I got to wear the green shorts that all the girls wore, and all the guys would make fun of me going to football practice. But I went out for football as well, and we didn't actually meet in a sporting arena. We actually first met at a clash of the combos at Christown Mall, and it was a big deal because all the bands from certain high schools would battle it out, and then they'd send the winner to Christown Mall, and they had the north side and the south side, and then the middle part of the mall. So they would battle it off here and battle it off on the other side, and then whoever won out of all those would face the other band, whoever that was, in the center. And it's kind of interesting because the Spiders got eliminated right away, and we made it to the finals. And we really got into this. I asked my dad, where can we get this big wooden spools that they put the wire on,
Yeah.
And so he told me somewhere. We went and got 3 of them, and we covered them in crepe paper. So it looked kind of like the Ed Sullivan set, when the Beatles did their premiere. We stood on top of them and tried not to fall off. And so as we're playing our little hearts out, the band that went on before us was called the Pendletons. And they were kind of sort of surf, they wore the Pendleton clothing. And their partner in crime was Tony Evans. He was the boss jock from KRIC Radio. And he would do events in different places around the valley. And I later found out that he would say, hey, here's the new Pendletons hit. And he was playing pirated stuff on the UK stations offshore that came out before the actual album did. So they were early Stone songs from the first album.
Wow.
Nobody had heard them before, so that nobody knew any different, So they played, and then so we're up there doing our cover songs and really trying to do a good show and everything. And as I'm playing and singing, I see people picking up the ballot boxes and they're walking away with it. And I'm going, oh, wow, that's kind of different. So guess what? We didn't win. So the Pendletons won. I later learned that Tony Evans was he was kind of a bit of a wheeler dealer player, and so he would bring the Pendletons, who were sounded a lot like the Rolling Stones because they played their songs, and nobody knew the Wiser were out here in the Wild West, in Arizona, and so everybody kind of would go to whatever thing Tony Evans was doing, promotion for Dairy Queen or whatever. And so I saw the Spiders briefly there. I didn't meet any of them. I just saw them. And then later, I got a call that from these two brothers. They had a band called Adam Strange, and Mark and Joel Rummerfield were their names. And they were like 5 feet-ish tall. And they said, hey, the Spiders looking for a guitar player. So I went on down there, and I realized when I saw them close up that they were down there when we did an audition for Jack Curtis at the VIP. That's where the Spiders had their web of mystery, and that's where they played down there, and they were the house band. And we did She Loves You, and they were all lined up and watching us. I didn't know why, but I guess because we beat them out at the Christown Clash of the Combos. I don't know. But anyway, so I auditioned, and they taught me how to rave up because we did a lot of Yardbird material. And then, so they, I was packing up my gear, and thanks for letting me play. And we're walking outside, and they go, hey, is that your Willie's Jeep over there? I said, yeah, the orange one with the Batman emblem on the back of it. Yeah, that's me. And they said, would you possibly consider carrying some gear? I said, no problem. So I guess I sort of became an unofficial roadie / guitar player. And
Wow.
That was it. I mean, no fanfare, no, hey, welcome to the band, And plus, one of the track members was John Spear, our original drummer. And I learned, had quite a temper as time went on. And so of course, the new guy, I had that room with him. And so, but we didn't have any baggage, so it was okay. I got along, and I was always trying to peace olive, olive branch. And so we never got into anything too serious. But I remember one day we were at the Buxton's house, Mr. and Mrs. Tom and Jerry, that was their names. And Dennis and John are having some words. And Dennis says, what did you say, John? He would kind of mumble under his breath. And he calmly put his bass down and walked forward, and then leaped across like 2 or 3 feet onto the drums, taking John down with him. And they just started going on. They were furniture knocking around and everything. And then the Buxtons came home. They were playing golf. They go, boys, what's going on here? You'll have to ask them. I'm new in the band. And so we were barred from there. Pretty much, that was the end of that. And then we rehearsed over at Alice's parents' house, and they had a nice white couch with plastic seat covers that stick to you when you're in the summertime in Arizona.
Yeah.
And so we're getting ready to leave, and she goes, "What's that?" And we're all looking around. I don't know. It's a white couch. No, that Mark. Get down there. Oh, that line, that little really light sort of dark color line. Yes. Who did that? I'm new in the band. That's all I could say is and she says, out, you're never coming back. So we couldn't I think of a space of a week or two, because they were breaking me in on, all the music and everything. We were banned from 2 places. So I said, well, we can always go over to my folks' house. And they had a pretty, my mother, she was a torch singer, I guess you'd say. She sang those low songs in sort of sexy way. And she used to sing on KOY radio and entertain the boys at Williams and Luke Air Force Base on the weekends. And she would, make them feel better that they're not home, and at the time, Steve Allen was the piano player there. KOY before he went over to Los Angeles. And McFarland was the program director. He later became the governor. So it was kind of interesting. And of course, when my mom became pregnant with me, that kind of meant her entertainment career was going out the window. And I was the hope. And so I got to take accordion lessons. I could have been a Weird Al, but I couldn't get the breathing and the squeezing and rhythm going. And I did piano, and that was nice. I had a very exotic teacher, and she had Siamese cats were like, it's like, I am Siamese, if you please. You know,
I know that song.
Yeah. And she was kind of strange lady, single. And anyway, I took a couple of years, and then at North High, they were something was coming up, and they were making preparations in the auditorium. And I walked in, and she was just 17, you know. And then, boy, I was like, "What's that?" You know. And then I heard "She Loves You," and I was hooked, line, and sinker. And
the Beatles kind of did it for you, huh?
Yeah, it did. And I watch. Shindig and all the shows that had. I actually saw that on YouTube. Some of Jerry and the Pacemakers, mm-hmm. And the guy that did what was his name? Well, doesn't matter. Anyway, all the strange acts that they had, and the Stones, and I just loved the Beatles, you know, and I started learning their music right away. And actually learning their music taught me structure of songwriting, you know, without really not realizing it, because I started out as a folk singer when the Smothers Brothers were on TV, and we were called the Other Brothers. There was three of us, a washtub bass and two acoustic guitars. We'd play at parties or wherever we could meet girls, you know. So it was kind of cute, and so that's how that all evolved. And so I didn't really meet the track guys, the Spiders and Track, but they did their Letterman Club show, and with the mops on, and I guess everybody had a good laugh. And so they decided to, let's learn how to play this. This is like, wow, we'll be really popular. So we started going at it, and it was different because we played. I lived on the east side, more or less, or center of Phoenix, and they lived out west. And so we played a lot of different places that I hadn't played before. But I did, there was a couple of guys, Floyd and Jerry, they had the waterfall, something wrong with my lip, all this thing going on. And I played with them for a while. Where actually I met Glenn Campbell one day. He came over to the rehearsal place, and we were at, and hi, Glenn. Howdy, Glenn.
Yeah.
And so I got to play down with Dyke and the Blazers down at the Counter Room Ballroom down on Broadway. And so I got kind of a broad, quick study in music. And it was great because the Spiders at the time did a lot of Pretty Things, which were then a blues band, you know, from England, and different songs. And it was great. I loved it. And I'll shut up now and let you guys talk.
So at what point? No, we appreciate that intel. That's some background that I don't think either of us actually had been able to put together. I feel like there's a time between when you guys kind of got it up and going that you were probably playing parties and dances, and then your own sort of, you were still young-ish, so you were playing some, you know, some kind of club scene, I would imagine. But but at some point you relocated to Los Angeles, and then I'm going to jump even further and started calling your band the Naz, and then you had to get rid of that. Well, tell us about that.
We learned a good lesson. Like if we went over to LA and like starved all weekend and got nothing accomplished, we'd come just back from Los Angeles. It's the Spiders, and we could charge another $100 more. So
right.
We started making trips, and we saved up a whole whopping $300 and spent the weekend looking for a place to live. And guess what? Nada. He didn't find anything. It was like 300. That's like double that at least, and then security deposit. Where are your references? We were like, I remember we were sitting in Griffith Park. We were bummed out. We're going, well, we'll never. What are we going to do? And there was this guy sitting over not too far from us, and he goes, "I've got a house." Really? So he lived on Fairfax. We went down to his house. He didn't know us from Adam, and so we started. The routine was he would go to work, and we'd take all of his furniture, move it all around the walls, and then unload our truck and bring it in, set it up, practice all day, move the equipment back, move his furniture back, and then one of us slept on the couch, two of us slept in the closet, just wherever we could lay our heads, pretty much. That went on for about 6 months, still going back to Arizona for occasionally here and there. And we come in. Oh, yes, it's dinging. Phone call for my lovely bride, Lynn. Anyway, so on one of those trips, I don't think we had an audition for Frank yet, but
okay, we
were over there. And when we started going over to California, we decided we needed another name for the band. And we got to talking about this song that the Yardbirds did, Nazar Blues, which was kind of a slang name. There was a Buckley, I think William F. Buckley did a book, Jesus Comes Back, it's the second coming, and he ends up in L.A. on the Strip, and he looks like another hippie, and he was called the Naz, not the Nazarene.
Right.
And so we thought that was cool. So we auditioned, I remember the Grateful Dead, when Pigpen was still in the band, at the rotating stage that Aquarius, the show, the Broadway play ended up. And so he had every band and that was looking for something, they played and got paid by who the promoters were. And then all the freebies came for the next 3 days. And we were one of them. We played, I think, 2 or 3, 4 in the morning. And then, yeah, we'll call you. Yeah, right. So we went back to Arizona, and then we came out and moved to Topanga Canyon, and that was interesting because it was down by Malibu, and we were out in the country, really. And Neil Young had a house on the other side of the canyon, and several major guitar players and families and whatnot. And so we moved into our place there, and on one of the trips back, we used to get together over at our road manager's sister's house, Bonnie. And then her mother was there, Bonnie, and Alice started screwing around with the Ouija board. And they asked the question, who was Vince in his last life? And he came up with this. He was a person who had some psychic abilities, who was branded a witch, and they burned her at the stake. And the rest of us came over that night, and Alice was all excited, or Vince was all excited. He's telling us a story, and we're going, oh, really? That's interesting. So I think we all left thinking we're at the search, so we'll go continue. And then the strangest thing, the next night, we all show up back at Bonnie's. We're going, I got to think about that. I like that name. And one by one, as we came in, yeah, let's call it Band Alice Cooper. Because I probably had the shortest hair because my coach pulled my hair out through that little hole. He goes, Bruce, I think you'll be having a haircut before too long. Yes, coach. and we had long hair and we were skinny then. The poverty does a great makeover for you. And so we decided, listen, it's good as anything, and we weren't coming up with any fantastic names. So we started down that road, and that was pretty bleak too, because I heard one guy, somebody that was in a record studio, we auditioned for Original Sound, who did Talk Talk, the Music Machine band. And he said, nobody's going to ever hire a record a band named Alice Cooper. It's a girl's name. Come on. But they asked Glenn and I to come outside. And so we're standing there and they go, listen, we'll sign you guys today, right now. just get rid of that Vince guy, and we'll have the Talk guy replace him. And then, because we could do Talk like nobody could do that. I mean, that was the one thing. The band was intense. I don't know where that came from, but we were intense about music. And we all realized at one point that we were serious enough. We started going to LA to see if we could find a foothold there. And I remember one of the scariest weekends was Dennis got a call from his old girlfriend. And she said she's with child. And he's trying to make up his mind whether he's going to go back to Phoenix or not. And we were kind of on needles and pins because, you know, he was an amazing bass player. And he had this Montgomery Ward's airline bass. And I never heard a bass from a major store sound that good. And he finally decided that he went back and talked. And I guess the time it had been apart was enough that they didn't link back up, you know. So we got a bass player back, and so we're living in Topanga Canyon, and Alice used to hitchhike into town, and he got to know the GTOs before. We didn't know they were linked up with Zappa. They were just they just dressed like silent movie stars, real pale skin, and they'd go around to clubs with Rodney Bingenheimer, the Prince of Sunset Strip, and what's his name, that the guy that did Suzi Quattro, that girl band, that the jukebox song.
Oh, Kim Fowley.
Kim Fowley, yeah, Kim Fowley. We went over to the Landmark Hotel because that's where Joe and Shep, where we met them, you know, ahead of myself. And I saw Kim Fowley seduce one of the GTOs. She was the best looking of the lot. And he goes, he's standing there. I'm kind of watching from, you know, back a little ways where he's, you know, making his moves. He goes, you know, I'm a very unusual person. And she goes, well, what is that, Kim? And he goes, I can give myself a blowjob. And he started putting his head down. And she goes, no, I believe you. Autofellatio, I guess it's called. And I was going, really? Welcome to Hollywood, I guess. So, speed.
Must have been good at yoga.
Yeah, really. Umati Siri Wadguruchi.
Yoga will do the trick if you want to suck your own. Anyway, so carry on.
So on one of our trips back from Arizona, we played several clubs on the weekend, and we're coming back, and we had this Dodge van, and it had the engine in between the seats, and it set up really high. It had a high center of gravity. So somehow we left early and we got out in front of the pack. If you look to the rearview mirrors, you'd see 6 lanes of cars slowly encroaching on us. So Mike Allen, we called him Ant Boy. We didn't know what the term roadie was. We weren't that sophisticated. So he starts speeding up, and this guy in some sort of SUV goes flying by, and he cuts in front of, you know, like to show his superiority or whatever. And Mike turned thought he was going to hit him. He was really close. And that we went back and forth, and then the van went end over end 3 times. Now we got all our gear inside the van. So the saving grace was, it wasn't like a blender, you know, with everything. We decided I got some carpet, and we laid all the equipment, we laid flat and put this two or 3 layers of carpet. So we could relax, you know, on the drive over and sleep if we wanted. And that kept everything pretty much in place. Neil got a slash across his head. The van slid right up to this embankment, hit it. The doors flew open, and my parents' $500 Telefunken tape recorder went bada-boom, bada-boom, bada-bang, and boom, self-destructed. I'm going, oh, God. I'll never be able to go home now. You know, I'm here for life. And then we got another quick lesson. So the ambulance shows up, right? And they take one of us right up over the exit. There's a hospital, you can see it, and then right back at the tune of $300 a piece. So we started dodging the collectors early on in our career.
Whoa.
It was crazy because I didn't know what to do. And Highway Patrol showed up and they just said, "Yeah, get out of here."
So you have you have your band name. What do you have the material at this point? Do you have Easy Action Pretties for You material?
Well, what we did is we started when I joined the band. When we rehearsed at Vince's house, I asked Dennis. I said, "You guys do any original material?" Because by then I had two singles out, and Pat McMahon, who was one of the very popular DJs on Chris Radio, played it, and he goes, "Wow, that's a great record." And I'm like going, "He played my record. What happened? Where am I?" You know, it's like, whoa, that was quite a for a local kid,
Sure.
And so I even changed my name on the record so as not to upset the guys in the Spiders. I put Bruce Michaels, because
Oh, I see.
how they would take it, maybe they'll get mad.
Oh.
And so Dennis said, "Well, I've got a couple of songs," and so we started working on some songs. And by the time we get over there and we're the Alice Cooper group, well, in this mix, the big part of it was we ran into this lady. I don't even remember how she met us, but I think she maybe was hitting on Alice or something. Anyway, we were living in the gay community there because our road manager was gay, and they were the nicest people. They washed our clothes and they felt sorry for us, and they'd cut our hair, and they were just really sweet people. And so she said to us one day, "The Chambers Brothers are going to New York to be on the Ed Sullivan Show. You guys need a place to live," because we were moving the furniture at that guy's house too.
Right.
It's something we did. And yeah, we do. And so she said, "I got a perfect house for us." So we get all our stuff and we're driving around. She goes, "Where are we going?" And I don't know. We're just following her. And, "Oh, look, there's a fire over there. Well, I wonder what's going on over there." Drive up. Wow, neighborhood's kind of different. There's a lot of people of color around. Oh, what's the name of the town? Oh, Watts. Watts. We're in Watts, huh?
Mm.
Oh, that's a fire. Just as the riot had just happened, where the brick clubbing and the guy pulling him out of the truck and all that.
What year was this?
Boy, I let's say, oh gosh, I'm so bad on time.
Well, you used your album releases as a frame.
We were out of high school, and we've been over there probably a good 6 months. We went from Topanga, and then we met Joe and Shep, and we got a house in Santa Monica, and then we met Sherry Cottle, and we didn't know it at the time, but have you ever heard of the Cheetah Clubs back in the day?
Yeah.
They were the old Aragon ballrooms.
Oh,
So
okay.
on the POP, we lived near that in Santa Monica by the pier. There was a Cheetah Club there, and there was one in Chicago, New York, Paris, and UK and London. And she was booking for all those clubs. And one day, now we're living in Watts, right? The Doors album just came out, and I'm going, I don't really like this, but yeah, interesting. And so she said, "What band would you guys like to see?" And we went, "Of course, Pink Floyd with Sid Barrett. Yeah, Piper at the Gates of Dawn." So
Nice.
next thing you know, they're coming. They played the Cheetah Clubs, and they're coming to Los Angeles. And we're going, "Oh my God!" So we got to hang out with Pink Floyd the whole time they were there. And Sid, we didn't know about his reputation, but we soon caught on because he was fairly normal, around, when we're talking, bullshitting, and swapping stories. But then as soon as they did their first television appearance, rolling, he'd just like stand there and stare off into space. He wouldn't play. So that was it. Pink Floyd became a three-piece for a lot of that time. Sid was there. And then when they played at the Cheetah Club, did the same thing. And that was a neat club. I mean, it had, I don't know if you ever heard about the insides. They had huge bulbs. They were like studio bulbs, for the big hot
Spotlight.
fireworks stickers up,
Yeah.
and sheets of stainless steel that they hung all around. They used to have the artists and models ball there, and just weddings. It was huge, all wood. It was really a neat building. Matter of fact, we talked to Brett Maverick. What's his name? Rockford. James Garner.
Oh yeah.
He was filming the Rockford Files there, and he talked to us for over an hour. And they also shot the last scene of The Fugitive, where he falls off the building, he falls out in the water. That was right there at the Tutti Club.
Oh wow.
So we're now living in Watts. We've got our neighborhood. The kids would run in and help themselves in our refrigerator, and we just go, "Oh, thanks for coming by and having some food with us." Because what could we say? You know, like if we tried to do anything, the neighborhood would come down on us big time. So that was different. And but we're meeting all these stars. We played with Janis Joplin and the Holding Company. I think we did the Grassroots, and we're trying to some of the San Francisco bands, and of course Pink Floyd. And when they left town, one of their roadies decided he was going to be one of the first illegal immigrants. Les Braden was his name, and he stayed. And he became sort of our mentor in all things rock and roll in English. You know, He was there when they spread off all their gear out on the highway, and it was amazing. And we already had an affinity because at the VIP, there was a lot of national acts. Of course, Jeff Beck played there with the Yardbirds, the Turtles, you name it. Everybody that was on national circuit played there. So we were getting the feel about, what it looks like to perform and how you wear yourself and carry yourself. And that only became even more intense with Les living with us. And then the perk was when Hendrix came to town, we were back there with him hanging out. We were in Los Angeles. He went to Tucson. We immediately went home and hung out in Tucson with him. He played down there. We saw him at the ASU auditorium there, and the Soft Machine opened for him. And we had a great time. We went up to this magician's house for the after party where he hypnotized Bill Spooner, my friend from the Tubes. Okay, now be your favorite rock star. And he put on a headband. And he's like doing Jimmy, and Jimmy's over there laughing. He just had so much fun. I told his sister that later when I met her, Janet or Janice, and it was amazing. And then, of course, when Blind Faith came to town and Clapton, this is a little known secret, but I'll share it with you. So we rehearsing when we first started and signed with Frank. We rehearsed where he rehearsed. So one night, nobody was around. I took my wah-wah pedal and swapped his for Frank's, thinking must be magical or something. And I'm going, okay, well, I can't try it out now because we're going to see Cream. So I thought, well, for some reason, I took my wah-wah pedal on and I swapped it with Eric Clapton's. And guess what? They're all the same. So it was not like a baseball glove where it has some personality, or something like that.
Wasn't the magic wah-wah pedal, though.
Yeah. And that was just crazy me.
That's great.
But,
I'm guessing that was probably about 68, maybe?
Yeah, we were there. See, we started going over there after we graduated high school. I think we all did junior college. I did at PC, and they went to Glendale Community. And that's when I met Glenn. He was living in his parents' house. He got what do they call it? Expelled because he was drinking, and his grades weren't all the best because he just listened to music and locked himself in the bedroom. And boy, he could play Chet Atkins, and he loved that kind of stuff. And of course, any Yardbird song. He was a great chameleon guitar player. But as time went on, kind of floundered because there's nothing to copy now. We're writing this stuff, And we started we had usually played 4 sets at a club. So one was original, and the other 3 were cover stuff. Then gradually it was 2 and 2, then 3 and 4. And then finally, we started doing an all original set, and that's what we were doing at the Cheetah. And we did this song called Levity Ball, which we actually used the track. It was recorded on my parents' Telefunken recorder. And they had this, the overtones in that place were so amazing. It sounded like you were inside a reverb chamber, if that, you could imagine that. And when Alice did the 13 candles, decorated it on the birthday cake, which were joints actually. And they had this sort of swirling thing going on in the building. I can't describe it. We used it on the record. And it was, we sold a bunch of records the first out Preach for You, but we soon got we learned that everything we did was a Frank Zappa discovery. We didn't do anything that wasn't Frank inspired. So, and then that coupled with the time I saw him berate a guy who was 5 minutes late all through the day. I mean, I can't imagine if I was him, he probably went home because he just didn't let up. And my nickname was for Frank, the excellent player, didn't do drugs. He grew up in Encino, where there were gearheads, and he had a low rider, and but everything had to be his discovery and his thing. And by the second album, we were kind of going, this guy's gonna, he's gonna adopt us or something, because we couldn't do anything without him, and we did the first tour with him over to the UK. And so we started, yearning to move on, and I have to back up again, but we went, Cindy, Neil's sister, and her girlfriend started a boutique in Hollywood. And one day, as they described it, two fast-talking Jews from New York came in, and Cindy said, "My brother's in a band," and she goes, "Oh, guess what? We're producers and managers and all that stuff." And so they gave us their card. Cindy gave it to us, and Neil and I hot shot it right the next day over to the Landmark, where it was very strange. We went in their apartment, and I'm going, "What's that weird smell?" And I'm looking around, and I walked in, and the sink was piled with dishes from the Cambrian period. I don't know what prehistoric period. There was green moss. I mean, it was disgusting, and we could get pretty disgusting. So we never went in the kitchen, and we talked to Joe and Shep and said, "Hey," we told them about the band and everything, and we said, "Yeah, as a matter of fact, we're going to sign with Frank Zappa tomorrow night," which meant in the straight record lineup, you signed with Herbie Cohen as your manager, and Frank was the producer. So Shep goes, light bulb. And he goes, "Well, you know what, you guys, we have experience. We can go in and negotiate for you, and we'll just do a word of mouth deal. You don't have to sign anything. And then after we prove ourselves over time, we'll go to paper, maybe, if it all works out for all of us." So that's what we eventually did.
Wow.
And Herbie and Frank were really upset that Shep came in negotiating for us, because everybody had signed with Herbie. That's why you never heard of him after that. Shep was the one that went in and face off, And I remember later when we were out on the road, we went in a music store, and they were by this time playing I'm 18. And there was no records in the store or anything. We told Shep, he flew out to LA. And then the next week there was a cutout of Alice with that whip, and that. So it was pretty amazing. I remember the first time they came out to Topanga Canyon, they had this blue Cadillac, and the other blue thing that was coming out was carbon monoxide out of their tailpipe. It was like smoke and big time. And they told us they used to manage the Left Bank, which I happen to really like, Walker Ray Renee and Pretty Ballerina, And he said these guys were weird. This lead singer started buying, he spent all his money on shoes. He had a giant shoe collection in his closet. And he said we had to get out of there. And I think the actual reason was they had a poker game going and maybe did a little, wheeling and dealing on the side in the unmentionables. And so they had to make a hot put it out of there. And New York wasn't far enough away from Buffalo. So they kept on going west and proceeded to kind of get back into that. And that led to another Shep and Joe story, the unreleased Bob Dylan songs called, they called the garage, the basement tapes. That's what it was. And I don't know if you ever saw that Rolling Stone about the basement tapes, and they quoted me as saying, yeah, that was unreleased Bob Dylan. It just had a white jacket and there was some songs on it. And so a thing happened and there were some authorities involved, and I don't know the whole story, but things changed a little bit. And but we left LA. We did a show with the lineup was, well, we first did the first Alice Cooper show we did was in Santa Barbara, and it was Blue Cheer headlining. The Nitty Gritty Dirt Band, the Alice Cooper Band, was on March 16th, my birthday. So I thought, wow, this is a special day. And the guy that sang Mr. Bojangles, I don't remember his name, but he, after the show, he goes, wow, you guys have a very interesting show. You know who would really be interested in you guys is Frank Zappa. He's starting this new label with all the, I know he wanted to say weirdos, but he said with different music. He was being very polite. You should check it out. So that's when Alice started hitching into found out the GTOs were living in the log cabin. And so we pushed and finally got Miss Christine she got us an audition at Frank's. And he said, yeah, you guys got to be there at 6:30. Okay. So we got up the next morning at 5 a.m, went down, unloaded our gear, took it down the stairs, set up, started playing right at 6. Next thing you know, here comes Frank down the staircase. He's going like, he's coming, goes, what the hell are you doing down here? Nothing, Mr. Zappa. We thought we had an audition. It's 6 p.m, you idiots. Well, we're sorry. So like Snugs. How stupid. But he goes, I got to say this. You guys really play well together. We could speed up and slow down as one unit. It was like having one of those echo machines, Maestro. You could slow that down. And he said, yeah, you can audition, no big deal. And went back upstairs, went back to bed, I guess. We were like, wow, was that a close call or what? We almost blew our audition. So that's when Shep went down and orchestrated a deal for us. And Herbie and Frank would have been out. What we didn't know about this was, you remember the Freak Out album?
Yes.
Brown Shoes Don't Make It, Susie Cream Cheese?
Mm-hmm.
Well, the word on the strip was, listen to that, Frank's making fun of the establishment. Let's go buy that record. So everybody's buying it like crazy. Guess what? Frank was making fun of the hippies, but they were so stoned they didn't realize it. And all of a sudden, Frank had a humongous hit on his hands. Now what does he have? Hi, I'm from the IRS. And he's going, oh God, what am I going to do? I'm going to start Bizarre Records, and I'm going to get every strange band, and they're going to record one album, and I'm going to have write-offs. I'm going to lose so much money. And that's what happened. It was almost like the movie The Producers. They're getting all these investors in this movie, and they're selling more and more than 100%, and they end up going to jail. So it was kind of like that. We all did an album. We were the only ones that got to do a second album because of Shep negotiating for us. And the first one, Frank got sick after 3 days. Then Herbie Cohen, his manager, came in to run the show. He fell asleep on the couch. He was, snoring by 7 o'clock in the evening. And then the keyboard player, he did the soundtrack for Little Mermaid. Sometimes I have trouble remembering his name, but he was one of the mothers of invention. And he finished the album. Thank God, he did a good job. And so that got us a second album. And we sold some records, actually. But I'm sure he lost money because that's what he wanted, you know. So the only legitimate artist was Tim Buckley. And he did Star Sailor, was his album. And later his son sang Glory, that song that was in, I think it was the Civil War movie with Ferris Bueller Days Off. And
Matthew Broderick. Yeah, Matthew Broderick.
That's a beautiful song. And he saved his son from drowning, and he drowned.
Oh.
Who was the guy who was on Straight Records with us.
I hate to kind of push forward.
I'm sorry, what?
I hate to just kind of push forward, but
I'm sorry.
It's okay. It's okay. All of this stuff is amazing.
I rattle a lot.
We could talk to you for 10 hours, I promise. But
yeah, when are we going to do the documentary? Just send me the paperwork.
Yeah, we need it. Right. I feel like you know, when you met Bob Ezrin, something clicked between you and Bob Ezrin. Well,
after our experience with the three producers and us playing with Three Dog Night, the Buffalo Springfield, and we played with them at a big concert in LA, and we realized we got to get our rock and roll booties together. You know, because we lost our first drummer, Ron Spear, and he was an animal. He did 15-minute versions of I'm a Man to shatter sticks. He was on the track team. Anyway, so Neil joins band, and he's kind of like a lot on the cymbals and not so much the John Bonham bass snare thing going on. So we moved back to Detroit, and that's where we started learning how to really rock, because there was a lot of rockers, you know, Ted, everybody else. And I'm sorry, what was the question?
Well, when you got into writing, basically producing songs, writing songs, creating,
he was playing with Bob Ezrin, with Ursa Major. I didn't realize at the time that's where Dick Wagner comes into the picture. Not so much on the first couple of albums, but later, and Bob playing keyboard. And I heard he played also April Wine, and I heard their single. This guy thinks the guy. And I rode out to the airport with him. He's probably glad we finally got there. I'm out of his ear. But yeah, we kind of clicked, and he said, "Yeah, I saw your show doing that song, I'm Edgy." We thought that had a lot of commercial appeal, and we're going, I'm edgy.
I'm edgy.
18. Yeah, maybe that's it. Yeah, that was funny. And before that, Shep had to go up to Nimbus 9, because guess who was really popular then? He camped out on the doorstep saying, "You need to produce this band." As they walked into the office, "You need to produce this band," with it showing a Pretty For You and Easy Action album.
Wow.
So finally, I heard the story. Bob told us the story that Jack Richardson, producer of the Guess Who, said, "Okay, whoever screws up this week at Nimbus 9 going to have to produce the Alice Cooper band." And I guess Bob screwed up. So he came out to the barn. And it was a nice place. We had a big paddock, horse paddock to rehearse him. And we dove right in. And he's a prodigy piano player, but he didn't want to go that route. His dad was a doctor. He wanted to be a rebel record producer. So that's what he did. And he could play piano like crazy. And I played a little piano. So what happened, the bump in the road was that he started putting a lot of keyboard parts to the point where in almost every song, and I said, "You know, Bob, we're not Procol Harum. And I play a little keyboard, but I don't think I could play any of this." And he, I guess, was insulted when I said that, and he got his feathers ruffled, and Shep says, "I quit." And I'm going, "You're fired." So we kissed and made up, and we proceeded, but he scaled down any keyboard parts, you know, to like A Long Way to Go. That was nice, you know, tasty.
Yeah, that's one of my favorites, man.
Yeah, I mean, that really, you know, I'm not a big dancer, but, you know, made me want to get up. So there was keyboard pads and stuff, but not like, "Mommy, where's Daddy?" I played that's something I wrote in Mary Ann. So he'd take these little vignettes and then build kind of music around them, and that became like Dead Babies. We'd have like song fragments, a good chorus and a verse, but not the whole structure. That's what we learned from Bob. And he helped us a lot. We started writing more and more.
That's why I kind of wanted to get into it, at least for a couple of minutes, about the orchestration of the songs changed when you worked with Bob, as opposed to where you were just trying to freak out Frank, you know?
Right. Well, the freak out thing was like, hey, look at this, why we're learning to try and rock and roll, you know,
Right.
all the glitters, you know.
Right.
So we would do goofy stuff, you know, like,
yeah, which is fine. I mean, I think
we would raise our legs and yodel at the end of the song. Hey, you didn't raise your leg there. That's how. And then we played at the baseball stadium in LA, outside of LA. We used to have all the ball games, and Alice Cooper faces the Chamber of Fire, and what that was is a wooden rectangle with the banners you see over car lots. They're made of plastic, and we lit them on fire, and they're dripping hot plastic down.
Ouch.
And that was the Chamber of Fire in the broad daylight. We did get the fire marshal out, and he goes, oh. And that was kind of a precursor of things like that to come. People, you know, sort of overdoing it when they're pointing out we're not supposed to be doing something. You know, the fireman, we're playing outside. You know, we could have burned up the stage maybe, but that's it. There's dirt all around us. So that was one of those uncanny things. But as we got into it, we liked the spark, sort of it didn't get too far over orchestrated like Moody Blues, for instance. But like on, the next album, Desperado, I love that. It was sort of had that Western theme, and it was a song I wrote, and Alice wrote these gunfighter lyrics to it, and I just connected like a couple of train cars, you know, just.
Well, and the song is longer, like a Pink Floyd song or something, but it has these movements like pieces of a classical song. Has, you know, all these moving parts and everything. And Desperado, in particular, has the gallop. Don't.
Right.
Yeah, it's moving. Halo of Flies. Halo of Flies is another one that's kind of built the same way.
When we played them, though, they weren't so classical. We didn't have classical training, so they came out sort of in translation, you know, something was lost in translation, which was okay. We were hitting the right notes, but I remember later on when we did the West Side Story, having trouble catching that one part. But, you know, that's our shortcomings.
I wanted to ask,
do you have something?
Yeah, I do. I wanted to ask, your writing credits, I mean, are phenomenal. You know, you had a major hand in 18 Schools Out, No More Mr. Nice Guy, all these classic songs. But there's one song that's one of my favorites from Alice Cooper, the Alice Cooper Group, and you are the sole writer. You're credited as the sole writer, and that song is "Be My Lover."
Oh, wow.
So tell me about now when it credits you as the sole writer, does that include lyrics as well?
Yeah, that's kind of what that meant, you know.
Okay, because
Morocco Boys, we used to call Vince when there was, you know, we did a cover song and there was no lyrics, an instrumental. He'd, do this thing, Morocco Boy. Or
well, I love that song.
Cabana, you know.
I love the song and I love the lyrics. To me, it's one of my favorite songs from that era. Tell me about writing that and coming up with those lyrics, and the story is great. That I was played guitar in a rock and roll band. Tell us a little bit about that song. It's you're the sole writer on that.
We're now out. We started. The Quattro sisters lived in Detroit and played around. Susie Quattro was in there, and Chip got Leo Finn, their road manager, because he knew all the booking agents. From the Easttown Theater to the Grandy Ballroom. So we're out playing a lot, and we finally got to graduate from the 9-passenger station wagon of death into short hops. You know, if we couldn't make it, we'd book gigs. Sometimes we didn't have enough time to drive to. And on one of them, somewhere, so most of the passengers are on the plane, and we come in long hair and looking strange. Sitting down, I sat down next to this elderly lady and somebody else, and she turned to me and said, "Are you boys an orchestra?" And I'm going, "No, yeah, the lyric kind of started from there. Listen, baby," but as a grandmother, so I changed that. "You really wouldn't understand. No, we're not an orchestra. We're a musical group." He goes, "Oh, that's nice." As it turned out, the girl was sitting next to me was quite attractive, and so I said, "What's your name?" And we just started talking, and I asked her, "What are you doing in coming to Los Angeles?" I forget where she was coming from, but she goes, "Oh, I'm going to a funeral." And Dave Lieber, our road manager, goes, "Michael, that's the best line I've ever heard. Well, what are you doing after the funeral?" I said to her, I should have got slapped in the face probably. She said, "Oh, I'm not doing anything. I don't know Los Angeles." "Oh, really? I used to live there." So that's kind of how that story evolved. And then it was kind of interesting because we would have a sort of a forum, and we'd kind of bring in a song that we might think would be worthy of doing. And so, I brought a song in, Dennis or Neil or whoever had a song, and sort of share the idea of the song, and then maybe Vince or Dennis will write some lyrics. That's how it came. The epitome of that was on I'm 18. Alice wrote a very good first draft, and we all at the tribunal said, "We think you can do it even better. Why don't you go back to the drawing board?" Oh God. Anyway, so he goes back, and the next one is better, and it's starting to, "Alice, you think you got one more in you?" And then that's the one you hear on the record. He nailed it big time. I was impressed. He was the editor at the school paper when he was in Cortez and Glendale Community College, and so he had an affinity for words and things like that. And that kind of he would sometimes, like a Nice Guy, for instance. I had a lyric you might get a kick out of. "It used to be such a sweet, sweet thing, but that was just a burn. I used to break my back just to kiss her ass and got nothing in return. All my friends said, 'Man, you're crazy for being such a fool.' Well, I guess I was, because being in love made me so uncool. Now I'm no more Mr. Nice Guy." So he flips it to the press, which he was getting a lot of. By then, he was this, different sort of a lead singer, for a group. And so that whole thing, interaction and playing, still going on late in the game as the albums proceeded. I'd come in with a chorus and verse, and we'd take it to the next level. And I used to sit when we were tuning up and warm up with just guitar riff germs, playing this and that. And we used a lot of parts of some of those jams for songs we did with the band. So I'm going to tell you about Halo of Flies. So I had these odd bits left over. And so I started streaming or, playing them together in some sort of order. And we started, "Hey, that sounds kind of interesting." Dennis came in with this, everybody throw in, and the early version, Glenn, I think, even had the School's Out riff, that might have been a different song. Maybe that was I'm Edgy playing the da-da in the jam, because we did a lot of long jams because we didn't have a lot of original material at the time. So stretch it. And so that's where a lot of those things came from. And then we were big on just baking it and making it work. It got to be productive.
You pulled it off.
Yeah, I'll say.
You pulled it off.
And we hadn't become too jaded where we were now, you're not messing with my lyrics.
Yeah, you kind of proved yourself. 8 records in like 6 years or something crazy like that. And less than that, 5 years maybe.
Yes. Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, well, that old saying, when you're hot, you're hot. When you're not, you're not.
Yeah.
I don't even know if that song was out then. Maybe it came later. But
well, these are incredible stories, man.
Yeah.
Well, we have to do a part 2.
I would love to.
Yeah.
The sequel. Come on back, viewers. You're going to love it.
They will. They would love to see you again.
Yeah. Tell us real quick. I asked Neil this question when we had him on the show, and I ask anybody that's in a band that puts on a big theatrical production. And of course, you guys are sort of the forefathers of that. What was your biggest Spinal Tap moment on stage with all the props, the guillotine, the snake, all the props and things that are on the Alice Cooper stage back in those days? Surely there was a time when you fell off the stage or ran into something or bumped your head or whatever.
There was a couple of them, and they were linked with the execution. Okay. So the first one obviously was the hanging, right? So one night, and I got my brother. He was one of the roadies on the show, and he's in charge of pulling the right. Glenn does it on stage, but there's really a lever down below, right? Mm-hmm. So we do they march up to the gallows, and Glenn has the hood on and the torches and everything, and Alice is on the gallows, and they put the noose around his neck, and Glenn pulls a trap door, and Alice is still standing there. So Shep starts pulling at his hair and runs over to my brother and goes, "Pull the lever," and he pulls it. Nothing's happening. There's something wrong. And then Alice starts jumping up and down on the gallows like, "I'm going to hang myself." And finally, boom, he did. And wow. It was like we were going, okay, what just happened? And found out one of the mechanisms, what we had to assemble it. Warner Brothers took a stage gallows, like we had used in a Western, mm-hmm. and broke it up into pieces that you could put in anvil cases. There was 4 cases for the guillotine. And somehow in putting it and taking it out, something got askew and it wouldn't release the trap door. So also too, every one of us got hung before Alice did. He was scared of it, right? So that made him jumping up and down even crazier. I'm scared to death. I'm jumping up and down. I want to hang myself. So fast forward to the guillotine. Same sort of thing. We all got guillotined. Alice didn't want to know about it because it looked so real. And Amazing Randy told us that unless you had a camera, your eye didn't react fast enough to see as the guillotine comes down the blade in the grooves on each side. There's a runner this far in front of it. It trips a spring activated thing, and the spring goes boom down in front with where Alice pulls out and puts the head in there. And then Amazing Randy comes up and pulls it back, and it's the dummy head you see.
Yeah.
So he just said he wasn't going to do it, and we were going, "Oh, come on, Alice, it's easy. Look, I can do it. If I can do it, you can do it." We all tried to romance him, but I guess I don't really know what finally got him on there. Maybe Shep said, "Look, you're going to become Alice B. Toklas if you don't do this," because now you've got to man up, so to speak. So he got on, crawled in there, and Randy had to walk him through how it worked and show him every little stage so there was no surprises. And he finally did it, but it took some teeth pulling. So I think the other not so amazing thing was so we were trying to find something to follow now the beheading, the guillotine. So we're kicking around ideas and we're not coming up with anything. So one of our roadies said, "Hey, Warner Brothers has this big cannon that breaks up into cases. I think they use it for Christmas time, a toy cannon." I don't know what the hell. So we got it out there. So Alice climbs in it. There's a trap door that you don't see. He gets out, and inside is a dummy that looks like Alice. And it's spring-loaded, and the light diffuser goes, and then boom, big boom, sound effect, and the dummy goes flying out, and then Alice is already out in the audience. Pops up, "Hey, look, I got shot out of a cannon." Nobody liked it. Nobody liked it, and it's all our fault. So, so I got this. I said, "What, Alice? Why don't you get on top of the can and sort of love it to death? Stroke it like it's a big penis, And then out of the front was supposed to, in a true orgasmic moment, it was supposed to spray out. It was sort of like a Gallagher thing when he smashes the watermelon and it sprays on you. That's part of the whole fun of the thing. You get pelted with watermelon seeds, and well, it came out. So he's stroking it, and then release the sperm. Like it just dribbles out the front and falls down. And I thought, that's not it. We couldn't figure out how to make it spray out because it was so thick to look like Gizmo or whatever.
Yeah.
It was like pancake syrup.
Yeah.
And it didn't happen. And so
Neil told us that it made the stage very slippery and dangerous.
yeah, I think we tried it out. We used to always do like
there went our rated. There went our G rating. There went our G rating on that show.
We never had a G rating.
Yeah, we never had a G rating.
So that's when Joe Gannon came from Neil Diamond. He worked for Neil, and he joined us, and they whipped up the King Tut, and the levels of the stage, and that was a pretty amazing stage. There was only one fly in the ointment. On the post in those sort of, I call them the go-go booths, there was 4 poles where I stood in one and Glenn's in the other. Dennis is somewhere roaming around behind Alice, and there's the King Tut behind Neil, and then his drum set. They used real metal, and they were like little shards of razor blades. And you could only get around to down where Alice was by going through this narrow corridor between the drums and the post. And I'd go whipping through there, and all of a sudden, I got cut and I'm bleeding. And now my white jacket's got blood all over it. And that happened a lot. I got scars to prove it. So, that was from all of that. And I kept saying to the crew, I said, isn't there a way you could if I just had another 6 inches? How about 9, Michael? They make fun of me. No, yeah, 9. Yeah, well, it was a joke, and but I didn't give up, and I finally got them in the last probably month of shows that we did with that. I got them to move it, and they said, "No, this is easy." Once I got to the right guy who helped design the stage, he goes, "No, it's easy." The next day it was moved, and hey, I could go by there with, "But we like the blood, we like you bleeding," and so.
All part of the show.
We had at the end of the tour, Dave Liebert, he did skits of different members of the band and the road crew, and he put a pillow, because I like White Russian, so I was getting a bit of a stomach on me. He put a pillow in there, going, "I want you guys to move that stage 1 inch, just 1 inch." Everybody's laughing. By this time, we lost our 707, and now we're flying in a 4-engine crop duster or something. But we finished the tour, and our parents actually went to the last show we did in Tucson, and it was pretty interesting. That's when everything went wrong for Glenn. Broke a string, and he didn't have a good night, and his parents got sick on the plane, and my parents just drove that because they didn't like flying. So it was a rough night, but we finished the tour, and that's when things got really interesting. After bringing all the babies, we had a great moment at the end of towards the end of the tour, and I think it was Rhode Island. We came out, and it was all the water. It rained the night before, was now ice, and it was gleaming like a fairyland of icicles and stuff like that. And we did Hard Day's Night with the turtles, and it was like really had the feel of the whole thing. They had great singers, and we, it was nice. It was great. I wanted to put it on the next album. I thought it was so good. But anyway, so that's when we took time off, and Neil wanted to do an album, and I wanted to do an album. I wanted to be the 5 or 6 Beatle, Neil wanted to do his album Platinum God, And I'll say, I'm going to do some nightclub songs, just a couple of, nightclub oriented stuff. So we proceeded to do that, and I was lucky enough to audition with a producer who was working with Gene Gene Cornish and Gino Donnelly from the Rascals. And they co-produced the album with me, and it's called In My Own Way. And I got to do a lot of acoustic stuff and harmony stuff that I really wanted to do. Keith Moon came down to play on it, and Jerry Beckley from America, and Mama Lion, who she was. The picture on the album cover was her nursing, you could see her breast with a baby lion cub. And then this guy, he was kind of a preacher and a rock and roller at the same time from somewhere in the South. He was living out in California at the time. And he was kind of like that actor, I can't remember his name, but got really popular, and he kind of did a gospel sort of a thing. And they came down and sang on it, and Alice came down and sang, and it was great, you know. And then Neil got his album done, and he had a great song on rock and roll radio that Jack Douglas did, you know, after he finished with Cheap Trick and Aerosmith, and it was a really great song. And that was our first single on the later on the Battle Axe album. But so we're now back in Connecticut, and Neil called. I'm in Arizona, and Neil calls me and says, "Michael, we're getting together. You know, we want to work on the next Cooper album." I said, "Oh, wow, okay." So I had a deal in Germany with Polydor for my In My Own Way album, so I just left it at that and tabled it and went back to Connecticut. Started working with Neil and Dennis and Glenn, and so we've been there maybe a couple of weeks, and this will answer maybe a lot of your questions regarding the breakup. Sort of. Anyway, so I guess Neil had put in a call to Shep earlier in the day, and we're down at Neil's house in his basement. We're rehearsing, and Neil gets a phone call. And he gets on it. You know, he's talking to Shep, and we take a break, and we're, you know, tuning guitars or whatever. And he's got this look on his face. And, okay, all right, okay. And the phone up said, "Alice doesn't want to work with us anymore." What?
Wow.
That's what Shep said. Said Alice doesn't want to work with us anymore. So it was a mixture of shock, disbelief, and sadness, you know, because I guess this was going to be the end of this, you know, our careers. We didn't know how scary it was going to get, you know. And then over the course of time, you know, Chip and Alice had moved to the West Coast. I'm still living in Connecticut. I basically moved back to Arizona. Neil and Dennis started working together. We lost our accountants, so now we had to do our own taxes, which is a whole nother story. We didn't know we had any medical code because we hadn't used it yet. Part of AFTRA, American Federation of Television and Recording Artists. And that later, 6 or 7 years later, we found out that they credited all the medical to this guy, or to someone named Alice Cooper. This person who did the medical end of it didn't know who Alice Cooper was, thought it was one person. So Alice got all of it.
Mm.
He had no medical for 6 years. Fortunately, none of us came down with anything. You know, Glenn probably could have used it. It might have helped, you know, his life, you know, probably needed it the most. But then we found out it took another 3 years for them to unravel that whole ball of craziness.
Yeah.
And I remember when I was back in LA, this was before the phone call. I went, our roadie, Ronnie Volz, was our main roadie. And he joined us in Cleveland and saw a lot of the tours. And so we're talking to Ronnie, and I'm over. He goes, "Hey, have you seen Alice's show?" I said, "Show? No, what show are you talking about?" I said, "Come on, let's go." They said, "Where are we going?" "We're going down to Warner Brothers soundstage." I said, "Why are we going down there?" He goes, "You'll see." So we get down there, and we walk up out of the shadows, and I'm seeing "Welcome to My Nightmare." And go, oh my God, this is the lounge song act. It's a lot more than that. And then I realized, because Alice told me about the dream that he had about Welcome to My Nightmare. He told me all these things, the creatures in his dream and everything. And I think at that time he wanted to do something beyond our executions of Alice. How many can you do, till that goes away. And then we went to the big look at me stage, bigger than life, and then after that, Neil Dennis and I, we were kind of longing for the just plain Jane Stones album, gritty and, funky and all that stuff. And I guess Alice probably took it real seriously, because he's thinking bigger, badder productions, and we're thinking simpler, different.
Right.
But I was shocked because I didn't hear about the nightmare then, but I soon learned about that later. I saw the dichotomy maybe of the fork in the road. And I could see as an artist what he was going for, but as a bandmate who had been through hell and back, I mean, I went through young adulthood. I experienced, all the guys got out of the draft but me. I was the lucky one, right? I went from high school being a four-year letterman, a class treasurer, 4-year on the football team, the Key Club. Next year at the draft board, I'm a suicidal homosexual with a bad drug addict who's he's going to commit suicide if he has to go. They didn't buy it. I guess I didn't make the part come to life. Neil and Dennis, on the other hand, dressed in pink and kind of tiptoed in like this, the two fairies on wing, flying in, and Glenn and Neil did similar. Glenn did similar thing. He was just had a lot of problems, and Dennis had high blood pressure. I didn't have those problems, and so my days in there was moving my board to California, back and forth to Arizona, because that buy you 3 months till showdown in Michigan was at Ann Arbor. And the song Steven on Nightmare was about a drug dealer and who ends up dying. But before he died, it was the next day or so, I was supposed to go to Ann Arbor to be inducted. And I said to him, Steven, I don't have any money, but I really need, can you help me with some sort of escape clause? And he says, yeah, I'll fix you up. And this little plastic bag, he says, on your way back, just snort this stuff. It'll take care of you. But I found out later it was real THC. It wasn't elephant tranquilizer. The vets would give horses and cows or whatever. And Michael Roswell, our road manager, all the way backward. And by the time he got to Ann Arbor, I'm floating off the bus. Get out of the car. I got my hand on his ass and I'm scared. In one hand, I've got my birth certificate and my draft orders. And I'm getting on the bus and I'm like, oh God, this is really happening, and I kind of sat down in the bus, not knowing what was going to happen next. Bus takes off and it goes towards Detroit City. And it started climbing a hill. And as it climbed the hill, it just kept going. And soon it was flying through the air. And I'm going, wow. And then I don't remember anything. And then I remember coming back to reality. I'm talking to guys in white coats, and I'm not an animal. I'm a human being. I was so stoned. I couldn't. I'm going to and I was asking for a pen so I could write down. Somebody finally gave me a pen. And it looked like a chicken that walked through ink. It looked like hieroglyphics or something. And I was high for a week, but I got a 4F a week later. That's the fastest I ever seen the draft board ever swing into action that quick. I made quite an impression. I was handcuffed to a gurney and I couldn't talk. And I was in the hallway because Detroit General was over. There was a lady, give it out. I guess they took her baby. She's probably handcuffed to something. I'm handcuffed to this bed until I came down and nobody knew where I was. They finally came and got me, and that was my finally got the draftboard behind me. So that all this happened, and all these thoughts are going through my mind, as Alice is now leaving us, and I guess we're all on our own now.
Yeah. Well, we're glad you weathered the storm, and you're doing well today, it looks like. And I know that you and Alice have worked together a little bit here in the recent years. So, Michael, we are over time today, but we do appreciate you joining us.
If you want to do another one about any other things, I'd be happy to do it. And I love being there for anybody who wants to know. My life's kind of an open book, and thank you for this opportunity. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. We appreciate you joining us. On behalf of my co-host, Jason McMaster, I'm Metal Dave Glessner, along with our special guest today, Michael Bruce.